You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Well, just like Star Trek itself, if you keep waiting long enough, we eventually come back. It's Monday at 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern, and it must be Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Tonight, a very special episode of Mission Log Live, but then again, they're all special in their own way, aren't they, John? I think they are.
I think they are. I believe they are. Yeah.
And, you know, we're days away from the release of Star Trek Picard Season 3, and in honor of bridging the gaps between the next generation and now, we have and we are welcoming an insider from both, the effects and artist extraordinaire, Mr. Doug Drexler. If you've got questions and if you've got comments, or maybe just praise for Doug's work, we have answers, or maybe just Doug will accept the praise for your work. So join the conversation. Click on the Zoom meeting link or use the one tap from your smartphone or call us at 669-900-6833. Enter the meeting code and our esteemed Earl, the Duke of Earl of the Green Room, will let you in. Or is it the Earl of the Duke's Green Room? We don't know. We don't care because it's his room.
Yeah, right. We don't know. All right, let's say hi to folks who are in the chat, both on YouTube and Facebook, joining us live. It's our first show of 2023, and it is so cool to see familiar faces out there. So let's see both Pauls. We got two Pauls. Are we going to have three tonight? I don't know. But Paul 1, Paul 2, glad to see you both. There's Jane jumping in. There's Lisa, all the way from Northern Virginia. There's Donnie. Let's see here. From Western Washington, there is Chris Riker. Good to see you, my friend. There's Captain Robert April. Excellent. We have a celebrity in the house, along with our celebrity guest. Part of the Mission Log family, Heather Barker is joining us. Let's see here. David is there. Mike Richards, who I feel like will probably call in tonight. There's Alan, maybe. There's Alan. There's David. Let's see. There's other David. So we got two Davids. Wait, we got three Davids giving the Pauls a run for their money.
That's a full house. Three Davids over two Pauls. Right?
Yeah, two Pauls and three Davids. I guess you win. That's a strong hand. We got Lisa.
Paul on Enterprise.
You did. We got Lisa, who says, I'm here to see Doug Drexler. Yes, you are. So we'll get to Doug in just a second. And let's see here. We got John Cooley. We got, oh my God, so many people joining. Jeff, Ben, Jack, so many folks. I am so glad that you are all here. There's Rhea and there's Camille. There's so many people saying hi. I am so glad to see you all. Norman, before we get to our guests, before we get to our calls, let's do a quick rundown of what's coming up this week in Mission Log world, shall we? Why don't you tell us what's happening on Mission Log this week?
Okay, so this week we are going to be dropping a new episode this Thursday with, hold your breath, people, The Swarm. Okay, so if you don't remember The Swarm, you're going to remember it after our recap of it. So as always, you can send your emails and comments, and I'm sure that you're going to have some on The Swarm to missionlog@roddenberry.com if you feel inclined to do so, to remark on what we said or didn't say on this Thursday's podcast. You can also find us on YouTube at Roddenberry Entertainment to catch up on all the content that we have, including Mission Log Prodigy. So in the interim, because Mission Log Prodigy is probably going to be seen maybe later this 2023, maybe somewhere around October-ish. We don't know, but that's what we're hoping. Until then, you can always find us on our YouTube video there on Roddenberry Entertainment. And Shar and I, we are covering a lot of, say, interviews and products, and especially our latest release with the DVD season 1 through 10, which is only half the season of season 1, and some of the special features. But more importantly, this is what you want to take a listen to. You want to look at Mission Log, the Orville. Do not miss the most recent interview with Captain Mike Richards and Jessica Lynn Verde. They did this with Brandon Braga. One of two parts this week. So there's a two-part interview. This one you want to listen to, and then next week comes out this Wednesday. The next episode comes out this Wednesday. They deep dive into Star Trek and the Orville. So Mike's and Jessica's style. They're candid, they're funny, they're fantastic. You want to listen to it? Absolutely. And make sure you stay in touch with all of our podcasts at podcasts.roddenberry.com.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So, without further ado, because look, the man is here. He is full of energy. He is ready to go. He is ready to talk to all of you. He has worked on Star Trek since The Next Generation. He has worked behind the scenes as a makeup artist, scenic artist, illustrator, CG artist. Look, there's so many titles. I'm not even kidding you. I had to text him earlier and say, what is your title on this one? Because we don't even know. Okay, there's too many skills to fit on a single page. He is an Emmy and Academy Award winner, and that's just 2 out of multiple. He is Doug Drexler. Most importantly, he is our friend.
Welcome, Doug.
Welcome to the show.
Lies.
No, that didn't go far enough. That's the thing. All right.
It's been a crazy career, and and I mean, not Star Trek is my first love, but there was Battlestar Galactica. I was on Orville too.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I can't even believe. I can't. It's just I'm writing my memoir, as we speak.
Yeah.
And I'm flipping through it. I mean, I'm already over 300 pages, and I'm looking through it, and I'm going, "This is impossible. Like this couldn't be happening. It's lies, all lies." No, it's not. It's just crazy stuff. Star Trek has looked after me my entire life. I was watching the show first run in 1966, first season in black and white, and I was just remarking on how one of the things about Star Trek Picard is that it's Next Generation coming full circle for everybody, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera too, So it's like, when I say Star Trek has looked after me for my entire life, I had mentioned to you that, when my darling Dorothy had passed, Barbara Luna, who was one of my heroes from the original series, just was looking after me constantly to make sure I was okay and take care of me and be there for me. And that's like absolutely the Twilight Zone. Amazing. She's one of my best friends.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of go back a little bit, because that to me is such an amazing part of the story, is that you grew up a fan, and then you sort of stepped into the professional world where the store and all the fan outreach that was happening out of New York, and then you find yourself in Hollywood. You start working in makeup. You find yourself on Next Gen. So you have this whole career in Star Trek, and then it seems like at a certain point, okay, the Star Trek part of the career is done, but Star Trek never really ends.
Well,
and then suddenly you get a call to come back.
Go on forever,
Yeah.
And it really has.
It truly has, yeah. Were you surprised to get a call to come back into Picard?
Well, yes. I mean, at the point where the Berman era of Star Trek came to an end, and that was Enterprise.
Yeah.
It was a few years before J.J. Abrams started up his thing, and they had kind of made a decision that some of the departments or department heads were like, well, we really don't want to bring people in who know the show, because we want to, do a new spin on it. And I know a lot of my friends who worked on the older shows, that was an issue, Mm-hmm. I was okay with that because I had just gone to Battlestar Galactica. And in a way, it was beneficial to me that Enterprise was canceled, because I went to BSG and worked with Gary, who was from Star Trek. And we, were nominated for a bunch of Emmys and won a couple,
Mm-hmm.
So that break was actually a bonus for me, Whether I really didn't think any of us would ever be back on Star Trek again. But the thing was that, and I totally understand that if you get a production designer, he's going to say, I want to put my mark on this. There's two kinds. You're going to get someone who wants to put their own mark on the show, and I totally understand that. Or you're going to get somebody who really grew up on the show and is really interested in the continuity. Now, I am a continuity freak. But the thing is that Star Trek, being science fiction, is supposed to be stretched 10,000 directions. And somewhere along the line, the Star Trek universe splintered like the multiverse of madness. And all these shows are not in the same timeline. To me, Discovery is not in the TNG timeline. Those are two different timelines, two different universes. So if I look at it that way, I'm okay with all the little things that don't exactly line up. But I will say that Picard is the first show since Enterprise ended that is in that universe, and you will feel like you're in that universe again.
I'm sorry, John. Like
No,
Doug, that brings up an interesting point because on Mission Log, John and I have said that this era from like 1987 to 2005, that we consider that the design wise like the Herman Zimmerman era. Like everyone knows that there's a certain kind of like shorthand. When you look at Star Trek, you look at the LCARs, you look at the way that certain things are designed, the phasers, the ship designs, the costume designs, etc. That's of a certain era. So when you move forward into, say, Picard, and what is it about moving forward with this series that is challenging to make it future forward, but at the same time bring that through line from the era that you worked on for so long? Is that something that was daunting, or did you challenge yourself like, I want this?
No, I think it wasn't really daunting. I mean, we knew it was challenging. I felt that, I mean, like I was mostly involved with ships. And what Dave Blass, God bless Dave Blass, because it was Dave who brought me and Michael Kuda in and stuff, because he was a fan of all those, that Herman Zimmerman era, and so wanted us to be involved with it. And we had Terry Metalis as the showrunner, who had been with us like as an assistant on Voyager and Enterprise. When this is so much a part of our DNA that it seemed totally natural to fade back into it and try to bring it further along. I think for one thing, the ships, the interiors are a little more of a challenge, I think, of the ship. I think the exteriors, to us, there's an aesthetic and a design aesthetic that we wanted to carry forward that we haven't seen in a long time on some of the shows. And I think that if we did that and did it sleekly, everyone would love it. And the reactions have been really great. I mean, the first time people saw the Stargazer, and there was a long, loving shot of it, and you could look at it and go, oh my God, the hull plating makes sense. And those are phaser strips, and I see an airlock, and, So for us, that was the goal, to bring the ships and the aesthetic that we all loved just forward, a little bit, a turn of the screw forward into the future. It's crazier if you're going 1,000 years into the future. Then that's why a ship that's as far out as the Enterprise J.
The J, yeah. Mm-hmm.
With the J, if people aren't looking at it and saying, that's stupid, you failed. Because if it doesn't get that reaction, you haven't gone far enough. I mean, like, for instance, I'm sorry, I tend to go all over the place, but when the original series came out, I used to get in arguments as a kid with people over the Enterprise because of the struts on the warp nacelles. They would mock those and say how ridiculous that was. And to me, it shows a kind of weakness in a person's character when you do that. You're not looking at it and saying, wow, they obviously have technologies far beyond what we know to be able to do that, which, instead you get people who say, boy, are they stupid. They did such a stupid thing there. Why are you just jumping to the criticism? Think about what that says in the design. Matt Jeffries, who was a designer of the original ship, and Gene Roddenberry, they were both aviators. Matt was a flight engineer. And it's like, I'm sorry if I'm spinning off here, but in the season 2, they had scenes on board the Stargazer with those shiny floors, almost like mirrors. And I read so many comments.
Oh, Floorgate. I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah, they're saying,
yeah.
Oh my God, how can anybody even walk on those floors? How can you be sliding like ice? And I'm thinking, dude, do you really think Starfleet would put floors on their ship that people can't walk and run on? Honestly, you can accept that they could fly across the universe.
Right.
Original series, you can accept Requiem for Methuselah. You're able, it's like a window on the bridge.
Right.
You can accept a guy who's been Michelangelo and, all these people all through, history, like in Requiem for Methuselah, but you got a problem with the window on the bridge. I mean, it's like, I don't get that. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, by the way, in the
Yeah,
chat,
but the floors, like for instance, I loved the shiny floors. To me, I'm from New York City, and the bridge on the Stargazer looks like Rockefeller Center to me. The floors are, if you live in Manhattan, you're used to shiny mirror-like floors, and trust me, you can run on them because I've had to. But it's the aesthetic of the new stuff that Dave has done is really beautiful and really thought about. And of course, my very, very favorite thing is the return of the L-Cars. Mike Okuta's L-Cars, which says Star Trek. It's one of the fingerprints of the show. When we went to visit the sets all lit up, what they did to bring L-Cars into the future with the giant rear projections, and they've got monitors that are so thin that you could use them as button panels and stuff. Everything is interactive now. We were on TNG back in the day. Those were film negatives with lighting gels spray glued to the back, And now I'm on the bridge, and as a matter of fact, we had, those see-through monitors. And you saw them a lot in the Helicarrier in the Marvel movies. When I first saw those, I'm like, well, who the hell wants a monitor you could see through? It's like, isn't that distracting? But all I can say is that when I saw these on the bridge of the Stargazer, it was just interesting how your mind turns off everything behind it. I'm just seeing what's on the transparent piece of glass that the images are playing up. So I had a total turnaround on those things,
Doug, I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment because in the chat, Heather is seconding your enthusiasm by saying, I love how many people working on this era of Star Trek truly love the show. Their passion is always electric, very invigorating. That is Doug to a T.
I love that. Thank you.
For sure. And then Chris Riker, I love this comment. He says, I have one wish for production designs that we get a scene where we see a worker on the hull bonding two sections together so perfectly there is literally no seam, unibody. That's the magic of the 60s model that I will always love. So nicely said, Chris. And then we have a couple of callers standing by who I want to bring in. So I do want to bring in Captain Mike, who I believe is calling from the bridge of the Orville. So
very
Mike,
nice.
Yeah, Mike, welcome to the show. How's it going tonight?
Man, it is going great. And just to echo Heather's enthusiasm and to your and Doug, to yours. I grew up right down the street from you, man. I was in Comac, Long Island.
Oh my God, really?
I used to see the Star Trek club flyers that used to hang around all over central Long Island back then. I'm just kidding. I didn't see those, but I read about them. But man, thanks for your enthusiasm. Thanks for doing this kind of work. And it's that kind of passion and flying off on those kind of tangents that shows the creativity and the love for this show. I'm dialing in. We have a sister show called Mission Log of the Orville, where we do a deep dive into each and every episode of the Orville. Looking for
BC
messages,
says
morals,
Captain
meanings.
Who. That's
That's fine.
Who exactly? Yeah.
So I want to just ask you a little bit about your time on the Orville. I believe you were in the art department, but just like your sidebar with Earl, you probably did a little bit of everything except maybe best boy and recurring guest star.
That's just it. When Stephen Lineweaver and Robert Strohmeyer hired me, they actually didn't know anything about my Star Trek past until I actually came in. Yeah. I was recommended by Jeff Mandel, who I've known forever and ever and ever, since he was like 14 years old, and he recommended me for it. And I remember I went in and I had a ArtStation page, and they were looking at it. And Robert told me later, he said, I don't tell this to everybody, but when we were looking at your stuff, he was doing a little dance because he's like, oh my God, this guy, he knows how to do this already. If you bring in just a regular graphic designer, and everyone in the union is really good, but it's in my DNA to do this type of thing. That's what I do, so he was all excited, and he said to me, he says, I never tell this to people, but if you'll remember, I said to you, if you want the job, you have it. Usually they let people sit for a couple of days and worry, But they brought me in, and of course I was thrilled. I watched the show, and once I knew I was going to be on the show, I watched every episode, and that horseshoe arch in the back behind you,
right,
used to be just like carpeting on the wall, if you remember.
I do.
That was the first thing I thought when I watched the show. I'm like, oh my God, here's mostly what you're going to see. Because you're looking at the captain, you're looking at the first officer, and then maybe you're looking at the viewing screen. You're going back and forth. All the cool stuff was on the sides. And you only would see that stuff when you had an actual scene with Isaac or whatever. So I remember thinking, wow, would I love to do something with that arch back there? And it was the first thing they gave me when I came in. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And for anybody who doesn't know, this is the Orville New Horizons, the third season bridge, which is different than the first two. So that's what Doug's referring to.
Yeah, I had a ball doing that thing, and it was wonderful. And I just remember that they had some conceptual stuff done that was like maybe hexagonal, lighting back there and stuff. And I think that there was a sample of it done, and Seth was like, "It looks like a discotheque," and it did. It didn't look. There's science fiction design, and then there's design that we call aircraft logic.
Right.
She got that from Matt Jeffries, and a lot of ships are that. That ship is not really aircraft logic, it's science fiction. Star Trek starships are aircraft logic. They're not science fiction designs, So that's the way I approached that horseshoe back there. I remember Stephen and Robert were having me do different ideas, and it wasn't getting by Seth. He wasn't really liking it. And I remember one day Stephen came up to me and said, you know what? Just do what you think is right. And I did like 4 versions of that thing, and it flew right by him. He loved it, and it looked awesome. And since it was the first thing I did, I was crapping my pants. That when the first time Seth walked on the bridge and saw it, that he was going to like it. You never know.
Yeah, you never do. I do know that he has said, going back and looking at seasons 1 and seasons 2 and some of the design work and some of the artwork in general, that he doesn't like to look at it because of how far the show has come. And I think you have a lot to do with how far the show came in season 3. When you were there and, you had, I think Marvin Rush had moved on at that time by season 3, but, Brandon was around. There were other folks, from the Star Trek world that were, really kind of ingrained in the show.
Andre Bormanis.
Yeah, exactly. Was it kind of like getting the old band back together?
Yeah, I know that those of us who worked on, Star Trek before were tickled to, have members of our old gang around. I mean, Andre and I used to chat all the time, and it was like old home week in a lot of ways. And also the other thing was that there were a number of people on the show who grew up on shows we did,
right?
And were all excited, that we were there, But yeah, it was I had a wonderful time on the show, and there was another family for me there too,
Right. And just another couple of things I wanted to point out, because I mean, you're probably too humble to point it out, but the redesigned hangar deck, which was much more functional. It looked like you had a lot of fun with that.
Notice. Well, that was one of the other things when I watched the show and they went on the hangar deck. There were all these markings on the floor. I could see something that I thought was in the center that looked almost like a turntable that I thought was influenced by the original series. But when I looked at it, it just didn't tell a story about it, what it would do. And one of the great things about Star Trek design and anything that's aircraft logic is that half the fun is looking at it and figuring out how it works without anyone telling you and extrapolating on what it might do. And, so it was funny. Once again, Stephen and Robert came to me and said, we want to redo the floor of the hangar deck. And I was like, yes. And I did a whole bunch of designs, and all of them were functional, and there's things about, you could see now that there are lifts, the demarcations on the floor, those are lifts like on an aircraft carrier, the way I've designed it. And that one that the fighter lands on, you don't see it, but it's hinged on one end. Fighter comes and lands, and it hinges down, the fighter slides down underneath it. And you could fire them out that way, 2 fighters. So I had an absolute ball doing that, and putting the logic into it and the story behind it. Anyone who wants to look at it is going to go, oh, I see it. I see what they're doing here. If you look at that and you're going, what the hell is it doing there? Then that's not good, But like I said, there are lots of really terrific graphic designers, but if you don't have this in your blood and your DNA and you haven't been looking at it for 50 years or whatever, it's just not, you're going to do see, that's it. You're going to do a science fiction design,
Right.
These shows, Orville, and especially Star Trek, the design, they have that candy coating of futuristic or science fiction, but the closer you look at them, that's the allure of a starship. The more you look at them, the more you extrapolate, like we did the NX. That is probably the most thought out surface detail on any starship ever. Mike Okuda and I sat around and talked about it constantly, and every panel is thought out, And we knew that people who were really into starships would be taking that thing apart and saying, I get what's over here based on what I know about starships. That's why Stargazer was such a hit when it first appeared. And the ships, there's a lot of starship porn in Picard. One of the wonderful things is that Picard gets back to basics in season 3. Season 1 and 2 are really interesting. It's kind of like when we went from Galactica to do Caprica. People are like, well, where's the killer robots in the battles? There's certain things that people want when they watch Star Trek, and one of them is starships. The first 2 seasons of Picard are much, much more character-based about what's going on with Picard, and make some people impatient, But I think that when you look at all 3 seasons together, and you see what they built with who he is at that time, and then finally come to this 3rd season to have this great outer space adventure with lots of starships and all kinds of, we got space stations, and it's pretty awesome. I haven't seen all the episodes. I've only seen the first couple, and I've seen effect shots as they've been going along. But it's really exciting. I think people are going to love it. You see your old friends again, and I'm telling you, I know those people. I was a makeup artist on Next Generation. I know what they're like. And I know they just fell right in and had a ball and probably were laughing all the time because that's the way the set was on TNG. It was like a nightclub.
Well, I can't wait to see that. Speaking of the sets on the Orville, do they still exist and will they be used again?
Well,
nice question. That's not a question.
That's why you get the big bucks. Yeah.
We have not gotten an official word from anyone yet. But just by my observation, the idea that it went from Hulu to Disney Plus kind of says it all, They wouldn't have done that unless it did really well for them. I believe there'll be a season 4. I would assume that I know the sets were disassembled because you can't hold, it's not like the old days where you'd go on a 3-month hiatus and come back. You know how things are now. It could be like 2 years.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but I'm certain that the important parts of the set were, disassembled and folded and held somewhere, I know the shuttles were hung on to, and everything will have to be reassembled, and it may call for some more interesting design work going on to flesh things out even more. Look at engineering, what happened in season 3.
Oh, it was amazing.
Mm-hmm. That engineering, the first time I saw it, I was like, I don't believe this runs anything. It was just so small and, unimpressive. And it was just like the back of the bridge and, the floor of the hangar bay. When they got to 3rd season, Seth and, Steven and Robert, I guess, realized the weaknesses that the show had. And then they took engineering and made it one of the most amazing engineerings I've ever seen. Yeah. It's split level and it's just awesome. And we got to do lots of interesting, animations. And there's a big cutaway. I remember Steven and Robert were asking me what I would put on that big, panel up on the 2nd level. And I said, well, it's got to be a big Master Systems display of the ship, only it turns and does stuff like that, which is what they did. But they really, really raised the bar. And some of the stories, one of them, of course, I'm in a very unstable emotional state because what has happened to me in the last year. Yeah. But there was one episode, I think it was called Twice in a Lifetime. Mm-hmm. where Malloy is like flung back into the past.
Yeah.
And I actually broke down and wept when they said they were taking him back. And he said, I'll fight you. I'll kill you if I have to. I'm not leaving. And it just tore my heart out because I kind of felt like they were threatening to take his whole life from him. And I felt like I had just lost mine. But it's just a wonderful episode. They did some really wonderful shows. As a matter of fact, there's one episode they didn't get to do because of COVID. They made a novella out of it. Mm-hmm. They were going to shoot it, believe it or not. They were going to shoot it in Czechoslovakia. They had locations and they were all set to go, and then COVID hit. And I mean, everyone who's read the novella knows the story, but basically and tell me if I'm blathering too much here, but basically it's a story it starts in Nazi Germany in like 1933, following some kid who eventually becomes a commandant at a concentration camp. A brutal one, you know.
Yeah, we covered it on Mission Log the Orville. I believe it's episode numbered 311, being
I was
kind of the
so
sequential of season
disappointed.
3.
It was it reminded me so much. It was the most Star Trek episode that I'd ever seen for the show.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant, and the audiobook is narrated by the amazing Bruce Boxleitner.
Oh, really?
Doug, I'm gonna do John. I'm gonna be gracious and excuse myself before he gives me the hook. But I do want to say before I go, because I have been looking forward to talking to you for years. My grandfather used to tell me, if you're lucky enough to do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life. I really think that although what you do probably does seem like work sometimes, your enthusiasm and what you do and your love for it, it's infectious, man. And I just want to say nothing but respect for you and to everybody else out there. Be like Doug.
No, I mean, honestly, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I have been. And Star Trek I can't even explain it. It is just inexplicable. We all know it. We've all seen it and watched. How has this happened? The power that it has. I mean, I talk to people all the time about how the show pulled them through some difficult times in their lives. The show pretty much rescued me when I was a teenager in like junior high school and high school, where I didn't fit in because I was a science fiction geek. Everyone played football and basketball, and I couldn't do any of that. And Star Trek just pulled me through that. Like a character like Spock, who isn't completely accepted by the crew in season 1. He's kind of an outsider, That really helped me a lot. And Star Trek helps people all the time and inspires people to go on and be astronauts and scientists. And it's absolutely amazing.
Mike, thanks for joining us tonight. And we do have a couple of other callers standing by. Now is your opportunity to call in and talk to Earl in the Earl Green Room if you would like to chat with Doug, because let's face it, this is a blast. But look, we are at the bottom of the hour and we have to pay some bills. So that's what we're going to do right now. We want to introduce all of you to our new sponsor, who is Toynk.com. That is TOYNK.com. And here's what's great about them. If you go to their website, you will find all kinds of licensed products, not just Star Trek, but all kinds of stuff. But what you are going to find from Star Trek, and you'll see it on your screen now, is just a ton of officially licensed products from CBS. There are exclusive releases. And get this, they have deals like buy 3, get 1 free. If you just look for the blue dot on your favorite products, you will find it there. If it's a buy 3, get 1 free, you get a free gift with a $50 purchase, and you get free shipping in the contiguous United States. They have a rewards program so you can earn while you shop. And best yet, you can take 15% off your order with the checkout code Roddenberry. Now, Norm, why don't you tell us about some of the amazing products that they have at Toynk.com just for our Star Trek audience?
Well, some of the products that we love, and you will see in a moment, we love the quality of the products, especially the comfort of the original series bathrobes. The bathrobes are comfortable. They come in this wonderful waffle pattern. The material is comfortable. It's soft. It's relaxing. It's something that you want to lounge in. They have this incredible 3D printed model of the Vasquez rocks, the iconic Vasquez rocks that's perfect for your desk, at home or your office. They have this incredible L-Car style dinnerware set, so you can have that aesthetic if you would like that on your dinner table or wherever you would like to have your meals. And then, this is something, John, this is very special.
Yes.
The Star Trek Picard dinnerware set directly from season 3, screen accurate, as we have seen.
You will see it in season 1, in episode 1.
In episode 1.
So you can get that dinnerware set for yourself if you go to toink.com.
Right, and across the screen that you've seen so far on some of the graphics, you have seen this incredible decanter set right here, right now. There's a decanter set. It's a wonderful, heavy glass decanter. It fills a 710 milliliter bottle of your favorite spirit. It also comes with 4 incredibly stout tumblers that you can have your favorite spirit with. Let's see, what else is there? The TOS style wall communicator. We all know that, right?
Yes.
That's where you would push that little white button and then you would have the bosun's call, and you would be able to talk to anyone in the ship. Let's see. If I take a giant inhale, I wouldn't be able to get out all of the products in my exhale because they are fantastic. They are screen accurate. They are wonderful. They are for your prop collectors or for your collectors at home, for your office, and much more.
Yeah. So our listeners get to take an additional 15% off their orders. Remember, they already have the great deals. I already told you about those, but you take 15 additional % off when you use our exclusive code Roddenberry at checkout. So shop today at toink.com. That's TOYNK.com. And, Norman, I see you.
Oh, hello, John.
Changed. You slipped into something, a little more Star Trek-y for the rest of the show.
This old thing is something I slipped on.
Yeah.
You look
good,
fabulous. You look fabulous,
Hey,
sir.
you look fabulous.
No, you look fabulous, sir.
No, you, sir, always fabulous. All right, let's get back to the show because we have Paul standing patiently by to talk to our buddy Doug. Paul, what is on your mind tonight?
Doug Drexler, what an honor. Oh man, am I muted?
Oh, you are on.
Anymore.
Oh, I love your cutout back there.
Yeah, we represent everything. We got a Tribble over here and, stuff and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and, whatever. I feel, and these two can attest to it. If we got in a room and started talking, I think they'd have to move all the furniture with the way we move our arms around and stuff because it'd be pretty exciting.
And not to get away from Star Trek, but I'll tell this as quickly as I can. When I first went to work with Dick Smith, the makeup artist, as his right-hand man, he had me come up to his house. I was scared. I'm making this real short. I was real nervous. I'm hoping I'm going to sound smart. And I'm doing this a lot and talking and trying to explain. And on the table, there was a bar of butter that he was buttering crackers for. I hooked it on my pinky and it flipped up. And I told the story to William Shatner and he was red in the face laughing. I flipped this bar of butter up in the air, and it went up in the air. It was like the bone in 2001, and it came down right in Dick Smith's lap, and we both went and looked at each other. And I just realized I had done the most horrible thing you could imagine when I was trying to impress him, and it was always lost. I mean, I just burst out laughing. I couldn't help it. I just burst out laughing, and then he burst out laughing, and after that, it was like two kids. The ice was utterly broken. So if you ever get yourself in a position like that, flip a bar of butter into your boss's lap.
And there,
I got to say.
Done very similar things several times. I know exactly what you're talking about. So as a model maker, I dabble in the construction of plastic models and have been since since Trek started, right? I have the original AMT kind of thing, and I found it the other day. A couple of things on that end. How many different colors are actually in the Enterprise? That's the Enterprise, the NX-01. I mean, when you're a model maker trying to replicate that stupid Aztec pattern, not stupid, that very descriptive Aztec
challenging.
I'm telling you, there are people who will get into arguments about, well, it's not done right. And other people just paint it silver and sort of dust it here and there. I mean, is there any advice you'd give somebody who is actually trying to do that live rather than digital?
One of the best paint jobs I've ever seen was done by, I got it right here. Oh, the FX company. They used to do stuff for
SFX. That one?
John, what's his name? I'm sorry, John, I forgot your last name. They made me a model of the NX, and I provided them with lots of references.
QMX?
QMX.
Yeah.
Because
they made them
that
for
thing was
QMX.
beautiful.
Yeah. That was the one with the mirror table, and there are pictures of you, Doug, right next to it.
Yeah,
All over the marketing for that.
I
piece.
loved. I thought they did a wonderful job because it's hard to kind of translate what the hull really looks like because number one,
It's a made-up ship. Let's remember, it's made up. It's a made-up spaceship.
Well, yeah, and it is. Well, it is CG. Also, it's not like you're actually painting it. You're getting a lot of surface detailing, and the way the lights flowing over it is a combination of different layers of textures in the program. And it's not, and you never really see the NX really brightly lit. Everything, that's where Star Trek started to look really dark. Space shots were very dark. And I also thought the ship was kind of dark as well. It was very gunmetal-y and dark.
Yeah.
I would love to, the original series was, and TNG, a lot of the shots were all brightly lit because they wouldn't be able to cut them all together and they'd all match. That's something Bob Justman brought to it from the original series. All these shots have to be able to go together, no matter how we want to cut it. So people have a difficult time looking at it on the show and really sussing it out and figuring out what it looks like. But it is really like, it's almost an aircraft aluminum, but with a variety of, levels of darkness and brightness. It's a tricky one. I've seen decals for it that don't quite do it, but
Yeah. I do know. Trust me. I know. I know. Along those lines, you mentioned the J earlier, and the first time I saw the J years ago, but then I recently I bought a book, and there it was in its full glory. I'm like, it reminded me of Discovery. When you take a look at the way those,
don't want to hurt my feelings.
Yeah, isn't it very? No, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm just the similarities are.
I don't see the similarities at all. I don't.
Oh, you don't. Okay.
Discovery is this hoop with a turning thing in the center and very hard angles. It's got hard angles on it like a Klingon ship. I mean, save that for the Klingons. To me, Starfleet starships are organic and almost like a marine animal. And I never got that from the Discovery. And Discovery is not, I don't, this is just a personal opinion. So people who love the Discovery don't get upset with me. But to me, that's a science fiction design. I don't see the aircraft logic in it.
Okay. So, John Eves, we've run into a couple times at modeling shows, and I just wonder, I just wonder what's your relationship in the artistic realm on these shows with John? I mean, it's got to be fun, but what are the actual,
well, first of all, we always have a fantastic time laughing, and we always did, all the way back to Deep Space Nine. And the way it usually worked on those shows was that, and it's like when you go into an art department and you're brought in as a graphic designer, which is what I was on Deep Space Nine, and that you're doing graphics at first, but then eventually Herman walks by your desk and sees that you're doing sketches and sees that you're doing CG models and stuff. And before you know it, if John is too busy, because he was a lead illustrator, it would get to, it would be me, like designing things like the Romulan shuttle or the Chaffee and stuff like that, the Chaffee shuttle. And I had a great time doing it. But the beauty of that is if you're the regular illustrator, you're expected to do it every day and be a genius at it. And this is what you do. If you're a graphic artist and they bring you in because so-and-so's busy, you're a hero, and you can't do any wrong. You're so happy to have an extra person. So I always felt like the pressure was the pressure wasn't so much on me as it was on John. But you know what? He never shows pressure. He's always happy. He's always smiling and laughing and pulling practical jokes, and he pulls some amazing practical jokes. But on Picard, it was different. First of all, John and I always would say, gee, we'd love to get to work together again. That would be a dream, and do some ships. Dave Blass was talking to me on Messenger on Facebook. I didn't know that he was going to be doing Picard. He was just someone who loved the show, and we were chatting and back and forth, and then he lets me know one day. And it was, I couldn't believe it. I mean, here's this guy, he's a production designer, and we're geeking out for like weeks before I find out what he's doing. And the idea of working with this guy in an art department who loved the shows that we did. He sent me a picture of himself in a motion picture era uniform when he was like 12 or something. And I was like, wow, this guy, the show's in the right hands, Yeah. So when he asked me to come aboard, and I was amazed because this was like the end of a kind of an embargo, you know. Yeah, I wanted to do it. And the other thing, of course, was with Terry as the showrunner. It was like, you know, made in heaven for us. Terry has said numerous times that it wouldn't be Star Trek without us. And Dave Blass felt the same way. So we were back in the show, Mike Okuda and, and me. And it was like a homecoming, but it was also a homecoming because we knew TNG was returning for season 3. And, you know, I worked on TNG as a makeup artist. I lived with those actors. And now I was having my full circle thing as well. The thing was that I remember Tobias Richter, you know, Tobias, he does CG ship stuff and he does a lot of calendar stuff for me. He was saying, oh, I hope you get to do ships. And I remember saying to him, I would rather eat worms than do ships. And he's like, why? And I said, because everyone is looking at that ship with a magnifying glass. If I do graphics, they're not looking that close. They look at it, but, you know, it's not like they're looking at it from every angle and they all have notes. And you know, I mean, I did a bunch of that on Enterprise and it could be quite daunting sometimes. And so when Dave asked me to come on board, I thought he was going to have me do graphics. And then when I found out he wanted me to do ships with John, I think I had a panic attack when he first told me. And the first day I started, I'm like, Jesus Christ, what are we doing? and I remember Dorothy saving me, coming in and say, you're Doug effing Drexler. You just shut up now and you be Doug. And it just like, she just pulled me out of this, you know, panic attack. And I had used we were laid off during COVID. I used that to really brush up on my modeling skills. You know, in the past, we had people we hired who were known for being modelers, like on BSG and stuff like that. And I knew I wanted to get to the point where I could build anything at all. And that's when I started building over the COVID pandemic. I was said, okay, I don't want to build starships because starships won't really teach you that much about modeling. I want to build automobiles. You know, I built a model of the Futura, and I built, you know, I mean, really curvy, because I figured if you could model an automobile, you could model anything. And just when I had built like my third car, that's when Dave asked me to come on board. And I was like, oh my God, the timing is just so perfect. And so, you know, we would have big group meetings about the ships. There'd be Dave there and John there. And we'd have, you know, Thomas Marone, you know, from on Star Trek Online, because those guys are really good. I really like a lot of the stuff they've done. And we'd have big meetings about it. And then it would kind of go to me and John. John would do sketches. I'd start building models. And every approval model of every ship on season 3 went through me. You know, I mean, there were some designs in there, like, for instance, the Titan, which was based on Bill Krause's Shangri-La, which was a fan design that Terry saw online. And Bill is like an old friend of mine at this point. I think I've had him I consider myself to be the guy who discovered Bill Krause. That I saw his stuff online and asked him to do a calendar page. I think that was 7 years ago, and he's done a page ever since. And, you know, Terry saw that and said, I want to take this and, you know, adapt it. And so, it would be my job to take the Shangri-La, put Stargazer style nacelles on it, put Stargazer style bridge module on it, because we were using the same bridge. And that's the way Starfleet works anyway. All the pieces are interchangeable, you know. So, you know, the villain ship, and I have to be careful what I say.
Okay, I'll give you an off ramp before I go, and we got one more wonderful caller waiting, and I'm going to leave you with this. I would just like to hear think way back in the archives, your very first convention experience. And then I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay.
And it's been a pleasure talking to you, sir.
It's great talking to you.
John and Norman, we're live again. Yay.
Paul,
Yay.
take care. Thank you. We are glad to
guys.
be back.
My very first convention experience. I will say that I was at the very first Star Trek convention in New York City, across from Penn Station there. I think it was like 1971 or something like that. They expected a few hundred people and like 2,000 showed up. And that was like the kickoff for the big conventions. And, now Anthony Fredrickson, who was with us on so many shows and I grew up with in high school, had made a phaser 2, the little, the cricket-like one, out of balsa wood based on what he saw in photographs and things, and polished it. And the little, piece of metal on top that you press that's kind of quilted looking and stuff, he drew it with a pencil. We were waiting in line to go in and he took that out. And you got to remember, this was a time where there was nothing. Maybe the AMT kit to make a Star Trek. And, a crowd, a mob of people gathered around him to look at that piece of balsa wood that he carved out. There's so many good things you could have now. Then it was like, you either had to make it yourself or, So that was and of course, Gene Roddenberry ran the projector and spoke over. The first time I ever saw the blooper reels was at that convention, and he narrated all the blooper reels, and he showed his black and white version of the Cage. Never seen that before, So that's my amazing convention story.
Nice. Hey, Paul, thank you so much. And by the way, Kim is standing by as our next caller, but I do want to go into the chat really quickly here because Vince, who is in the chat on Facebook, says, and this is a very straightforward question, Doug, which is your favorite ship design? I love the NX-01.
Well, I love the NX-01 too, but there'd be no NX-01 without the original.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever seen that piece of video on YouTube of Neil deGrasse Tyson at the Starship Smackdown at the convention, I think in New York, about what's the greatest starship. No one knew he was in the audience. And he gets up and talks about the original Enterprise like it's the sexiest thing, and explains how you have to remember what that looked like when it first came out, when everyone was just used to silver flying saucers and silver rocket ships and stuff. There was nothing to compare to it. And still, look, science fiction designs are pretty fleeting. They can go out of style pretty fast. But how the hell has that design managed to hang on for a half a century, still look believable, and spawn so many variants? It's absolutely incredible. So there's nothing like the original, but yeah, well, I love the NX,
You're getting a seconded here from Scott Palm, who says Enterprise TOS. And by the way, also in the chat, David says, here's a question with Orville stars heading to STLV in August for an obvious Orville theme panel. Will you make an appearance? And I believe off camera you said, yeah, Vegas is on your radar.
Well, it's the Star Trek convention. They're going to do an Orville panel. Yeah, well, my plan is at this point, it's a little more difficult for me to get away right now because Dorothy used to back me up. She could take care of the parrot. I've got a parrot that's 42 years old. I've had the whole time.
Wow.
And, you can't just have anybody watch a parrot. They'll take them apart, It's not like a dog or a cat. They're crazy. And I used to have a bird mom who used to babysit for them, and she's not around anymore. So before then, I have to figure out somebody to babysit for my birdie boy.
Yeah, I'm terrified of your parrot. So
Me too. Me too. He's in charge, let me tell you.
I know. We'll find somebody. All right, so we're going to go to our last caller, I believe, who is Kim, waiting by patiently. Kim, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing okay.
Hey, welcome. And what is on your mind for Doug?
Well, I just want to say, hey, great. All your explorations with Star Trek. I think it's great that you've done what you've done with Star Trek.
Thank you.
Yeah. and I hope you continue.
Well, I mean, is my Star Trek over at this point? I would not dare say that it is, because it just hasn't gone away yet after all this time. And well, look, I mean, you never know. I would say this: if Terry Metalis came back to do another show, and he brought Dave Blass with him, and he's working with Dave right now in Witch Mountain, so they like working together, I would jump at doing that.
Do you feel like we've kind of crossed a hurdle here? Because when the J.J. Abrams movies started, the first one came out in 2009, and then Discovery debuted in 2017. There was this sort of unspoken rule almost. We're moving beyond. This is our new thing. This is a different thing. We want a new team, fresh ideas. But now we've kind of come full circle, and there is an embrace.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think that curse may have been broken there,
Yeah.
Also because they've come to a point where they realize that every show doesn't have to look exactly like the other show, because I mean, I know at first they were saying that Discovery was the prime timeline, but once they realized it wasn't working out, they started saying it's a different timeline altogether, which I think is the safest thing you could do if you're not moving ahead into the future. If you want to go backwards and change things, you've got to make it another timeline. You're going to offend so many of your fans when you do that. But yeah, I hope so. I would like to. I mean, I love Star Trek, and I'd love to see us do it again under the right circumstances. I don't want to. It was a great thrill and an honor to work with Dave and Terry, because I knew that they cared about the work that had been done previously, and they wanted that thread that connected everything to continue running through it. Up until 2004 or 5, there was this amazing continuity. I mean, you had the encyclopedia that tied everything together and the tech manual, and you could count on things. That's part of the fun of the show, that you study it and you know it and you can count on it. If you start changing things, you're going to end up rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. As long as you say it's a multiverse, I think you're okay, Until I came to the realization that it has to be a multiverse, I was a little upset in the beginning, when I saw some of the stuff that was changing. Well, Discovery, for one thing, the ship. And that's just me, you guys. It's just a personal opinion. To me, it looks like a science fiction design. But a lot of people love it, so,
I'll fess up to something that Mike posted here in the chat. He says, a little behind the scenes, Norm has been smiling from ear to ear just listening to Doug. That's true. I've been a little bit silent and enjoying what Doug's been saying. And you know what? Something that happens, I think with all of us as fans, we get a little kind of like caught up in our own narrative, with what we think should be, what we think shouldn't be. And I think that sometimes we lose touch with why we love this in the first place, and I think Doug is a great ambassador for making us all remember, looking at Star Trek, why we love Star Trek in the first place. There's a certain joy that's intangible that it brings us. There's a spark that it brings our lives, and whether it's one series or another series, the point is that we're all here tonight and spending our time with each other and listening to Doug, because Star Trek in some way, shape, or form has brought us to this moment. And that's why as a fan, I'm just sitting here and like listening to Doug just espouse his passion for it. And I think that we need that every once in a while. So I thank you, Doug, for that. I really do.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you. Humbling to hear that, really.
Well, hey, that's, there's a lot of love to go around here. And Doug, you're a fabulous guest, a friend, and just thank you for sharing your talent with this incredible franchise for so long that you have. And I hope that we get to see even more as we're even just now kicking off Picard season 3, but hopefully even more beyond that.
I'm very excited. I think it's really awesome.
Excellent.
The premiere was awesome. And if I don't know to talk, but some of you may know the story about how Michael Dorn loved my name, Drexler.
Oh, yeah.
That's why there's Drex, son of, the Klingon Drex was named after me. But Michael Dorn used to, whenever he would see me at the top of that voice, would go Drexler from across the stage 3 times, every time. And when I saw him at the premiere, as soon as he saw me, after decades, Drexler. Well, Ira Bear saw my jacket. It said Drex on it. And he said, Drex. And I go, yeah, it was, Dick Smith used to call me that. It was like my nickname. And then the next day in the rewrites, there was, Drex the Klingon, who, of course, Michael Dorn kills, right?
Of course. There you go. There you go. Excellent. Well, hey, I want to remind everybody who has been listening tonight that the conversation always continues in our Discord. So if you want to join us on Patreon at patreon.com/missionlog, that is your key to get into the Mission Log Discord, where we'll be chatting about not just Star Trek and the Orville and everything else, all sorts of fandoms represented there. So you can join us for as little as $1 a month and adjust your pledge as you see fit. Patreon.com/missionlog to get into our Discord. Norman, what's coming up next week?
Well, next week, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like, regular week maybe.
No big deal.
Just a run-of-the-mill week. Oh, come on,
Yeah.
folks. We're kicking off season 3 of Picard. Season 3 of Picard starts next week for Mission Log Live. Join John and Holly Amos for episode 1, their recap and their review. So that's going to be exciting. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of conversation to be had about that particular episode. And before we say goodbye, remember, this is probably the best way to celebrate maybe, the season premiere of Picard. Our friends over at Star Trek Wines want to know what you're sipping while you're watching Picard. So remember, you can get the real Chateau Picard exclusively from them in vintage 2221, 2386, and 2401 bottles. Plus, you can get the United Federation of Planets medallion free when you add it to your card and use the code Roddenberry at checkout. That's the best way to celebrate season 3, episode 1 of Picard. I'll get that right maybe by next week or maybe when I'm hosting the show.
All right. And with that, Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production on Mission Log and Mission Log Live by the inconclusive Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from Roddenberry Podcasts. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/missionlog. Thank you to everyone who joined us live or later. We look forward to chatting with you again next week.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.